I'm Sheena, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. My sister Krista is here as well. She really introduced us to this type of presentation brought on by the Wisconsin Bureau of Consumer Protection. So really grateful to have Michael Domke here. He's going to be sharing all the great information that he has regarding common scams and frauds. Certainly, there is a lot of that going on out there, and I think we are our best chance at trying to avoid some of these scams and falling victim through information. So, Michael's going to dive into the presentation. Just a couple of housekeeping items here before we get started. I don't want to forget. This presentation is being recorded. We will share it after the fact as a resource for you or anyone who could not attend live. Also, too, if you take a peek at the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, the participants should see a Q&A box. So if you do have questions that you'd like Michael to address, just click on that question and answer box and type that in. Krista and I will be monitoring that and do our best to field those questions during the presentation. And then also afterwards, we'll address all those questions. I do have some post-presentation resources that Michael shared with me, some spec sheet on tips to avoid fraud, imposter scams, also a consumer guide. We'll be emailing those out as well. So keep an eye out in your email. And then finally, at the end of the presentation, there is a really quick, just couple of question survey if everyone wouldn't mind participating in that at the end before you jump off of here. So with all of that being said, I am going to turn off my camera and be very attentive to everything Michael has to say. Michael, I'll give you the floor and welcome.
Can I chime in, Sheena, real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing I wanted to say is I've seen this presentation now twice, and it's wonderful. Like Sheena said, I first went and saw it in Janesville. It was being presented, and I thought immediately of our client base, especially because I just wanted to let everybody know that we did have a situation with somebody that I work with, and it really kind of bothered me that we couldn't get in front of it a little bit, because at the end of the day, they were scammed and there was a large amount of money involved. And we got involved a little bit late to be able to help them. But anyways, I just want to say that Michael's going to present a lot of really great information, and you're going to probably think to yourself like, oh, well, I would never do that. Or, oh, well, that's obvious. Like, you would never respond to that. But like, you have to understand and put yourself in the situation where things happen very quickly, and these scammers are really good at creating immediate fear, and you respond quickly to fear without necessarily being able to rationalize anything. So really try to listen to the presentation from a very humbling perspective, and just remember, hopefully you can get a lot of really great takeaways from all the examples Michael's going to give, because like I said, I've heard it a few times now, and so often it's like, this seems obvious, this seems like a no-brainer, we've heard all these stories, but you have to remember, in the circumstances that these scammers put you in, you are very much in a reactive mode. And so it happens very quickly. So we're all just super susceptible to it. And I'm so thankful that Michael agreed to be here. And so Michael, thank you, and take it away.
Before I share my screen, if I could just add a little dialogue to what you two just mentioned, because you said two things that were absolutely perfect, and they fall in line with what we're trying to do. The first is that we like to say that the consumer is the first line of defense and we're the second. And it sounds like a cheesy tagline, but it really is true, because they don't get to us until it's happened, or it's been attempted, or it's out there. And so the more awareness that we can bring through things like this is a better opportunity to actually put the scammers out of business. Because we're going to see, as we talk through, these are happening by the millions, sometimes the billions in attempts. And the only way to really successfully stop them is to not engage and be able to prevent them from being victimized. So that not only is all of us here today learning this information, but it's also sharing it. We can only get in front of so many faces. So we always like to ask, hey, if there's an opportunity when you're sitting around dinner or sitting with friends or having coffee to mention one or two things on what you learned or what really stuck out to you, those one or two things are still one or two more things that maybe they didn't know. and helps us share the word to put the scammers out of business. The other is, you mentioned the victim shaming, and we call it victim shaming. And I really like, it's something that this year I personally as well have tried, along with the agency and certainly consumer protection, to make a vested effort in, because we see so many scams and examples of complaints and victims that come through here. And I would find even myself saying, like, how did you not see these red flags? But you said it perfectly, as I wasn't there and I wasn't as emotionally invested that they were. So some of these things that we'll talk about, you might think, well, it's so incredibly obvious, but what we're seeing is that they're being mixed with other elements of other scams. So while we're going to talk about the basics and the core foundation of how that scam works and what to look for, because we're doing things like this and there's so much more awareness, the scammers have to get a little bit more savvy, and they're adding different twists and turns, or they're stacking different types of scams. And so it does become very, very difficult to see them. And the more complexity that they're putting into those, the more awareness we want to bring. But some of them, even having done this for a few years and spent my entire life in law enforcement and things like that, I look at them and say, even with a trained eye, it's hard to pick them out. So anyone truly can be a victim. And we've seen the most educated individuals and even ones that work in this industry be victimized. So keep that for once walk. We want to try and make sure we share exactly what Krista was mentioning. With that, I will get off my soapbox and get back into the presentation mode here. Krista, Sheena, it says that I can't share my screen. It says it's disabled. The host disabled participant screen sharing.
Let me see if I can fix that. All right, Michael, can you try again?
I can. Good to go.
Thank you.
Bet. So let's talk about how much scam is actually, or how much fraud and scams are actually happening, but what they're costing. You'll see that this data is from 2022, and it's showing kind of highlighting some of the big categories and areas of where just the FTC was learning about and where it was reported. And that's identity theft, imposter scams, and then the abuse to credit bureaus, which really is tied to number 1 and number 2. We'll see 2.4 million fraud reports. I throw this data up because this number continues to go up and up and up and up. And when 2023 data comes out, I would bet the absolute pink slip to the vehicle and the mortgage that this is going to be higher. The real number down there on the bottom is $8.8 billion. That number will also continue to rise because we're seeing different types of scams targeting different types of audiences for different types of reasons. And let's talk about one of those. The first is who is being targeted and who's actually being victimized. Stats show that younger people have reported losing more money to fraud than those older generations. And there's a reason for that. And typically this is where I kind of reach out and find out, well, why do we think that is? And the answer is because the younger people have more opportunity to be victimized. In today's digital world, they're going to have oftentimes a profile on multiple platforms. They're engaging with multiple people digitally. So that gives them a higher likelihood of being exposed to one of the scams, but it also increases the frequency. And the scams that are targeting them are doing kind of that quick, what we would call maybe a snatch and grab. They're going in, they're trying to get is that quick steal, whatever it is that they can get out of them, and they're moving on to the next person. Conversely, when we look at the actual overall loss, the older generations are losing more money, and as you'll see, sometimes 2 to 3 times as much. The reason for that is because oftentimes they have more money. And so the scammers will use different types of scams based on which generation they're targeting and how much wealth they think they can actually pull out of them. You'll see what we historically would know as the long cons are often targeted towards the senior generations because they're going to have the ability to get more money, more bang for their buck out of the time they're spending trying to put those scams together. So it doesn't mean that they are individually, only target them, but we're seeing this is the disparity between who's losing more often, but who's losing the most. Now, how it's happening? Text messages account for the highest overall loss, but they also have the highest number of reports. The reason for this is sending text messages with computers and allowing them to be automated is very, very easy. It also doesn't require anyone to engage immediately with that back and forth. These text messages we talk about are that shot across the bow trying to elicit a response back. With a phone call, there has to be someone on the other line. Historically, I would say someone. As we get through today, will learn to understand that doesn't necessarily have to be a human being anymore. Emails are a way of life, but we're starting to see those kind of taper off a little bit as text messages becomes the clear preferred way to communicate. Outside of, I think, a professional business setting, emails still play a large role. You'll see number 5 is social media. I would predict, if you were to look in my crystal ball, that social media will continue to see climb. And the reason for that is it's becoming the preferred way of communication for a lot of the younger generations, where texting isn't even really a theme for them. It's all social media. And as new platforms pop up and become popular, everyone's going to want to have a profile and a presence on that new platform, which means that's another whole opportunity for scammers to try and exploit in that arena. So talking about, we talked about text messages and phone calls and what. The thing we like to highlight here is we know that getting these scam phone calls and those annoying constant telemarketing, potential spam, so popping up on our phones every day is, for the most part, become a way of life. And we at the agency here, along with FTC nationwide, have seen the number of reports and complaints about telemarketing and scam calls continue to decline. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. One might be that in reality, the efforts being made by the state and federal governments to combat this is working. And the other is people might just get sick of reporting it because it continues to happen. So what we want to point out is something really important called spoofing. And goofy word, but what it means is it's the ability to mask the phone number that's actually being called from. So at the advent of caller ID, it was a fantastic tool because we didn't have to be nervous about answering the phone and coming up with an excuse on how we didn't want to talk to someone. We could just look at it and say, no, I don't want to answer that one. Or on the other side, we would know who's calling and we were excited to talk to them. With spoofing it, I don't think it's a stretch to say that caller ID has become obsolete and you really can't trust it. And in fact, it's become counterproductive, and it's actually a tool to the scammer's advantage because it's adding what appears to be legitimacy to these scams when they call you. We'll talk about in a little bit a utility scam. So what they'll do is they'll mask that to have the name of the utility company and the real phone number of the utility company show up on your phone. So when what they're saying is dealing with utility and it matches, it gets your brain thinking, well, this might be legitimate, or at a minimum, it causes you to pause. The other is it's masking phone numbers that may be friends of yours or contacts or colleagues, and you think that they're calling you. And so you'll answer that, you'll get engaged in a conversation, and even in those few seconds or minutes might give away information you didn't really want to, had you known that that wasn't who you were talking to. Robocalls, these are the computer-generated phone calls that get sent out oftentimes by the millions. And they're also oftentimes automated messages. What we want you to do is just not engage with these. Like our constant theme is just hang up, because 2 things will happen. If they get that message that says press 1 to continue, or you'll hear, as you see, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Or there's a long pause and then you actually say hello. All of those are attempts to verify a live number. They want to see which phone numbers has a live person that will actually answer the call. And you may not engage in a scam right away, but they start to build that list that shows, okay, we know this is a number that can be used. And then also a lot of these scammers just use that and then sell those lists to other, I would say, more nefarious actors who will say, okay, now I really want to go after the scam here. Our advice is always don't press the button, don't engage. If there's that long silence, just hang up. If they say, "Can you hear me?" just hang up. Also, a quick pitch to the do not call list. There is an opportunity to reduce the number of calls if your phone number is not on the do not call list. The resources that will be shared will all have information on how you can add your phone number to the registry. Very, very easy to do. It's a lifetime registration. You just have to make sure you're calling from the phone the phone number that you want added. But one exception we want to talk about here in 2024 is if your number is on that list or you add your number, what that does is it prohibits registered and legal telemarketers from calling you to try and sell you a good or service. In Wisconsin, those telemarketers are required to register, but they're also required to scrub their phone lists to make sure they're not calling anyone who said that they don't want to be contacted. There is a couple exceptions, and one big one I want to point out are charities and also political action committees. Those two organizations and types of organizations are exempt from the do not call list. So 2024 being an election year, we all know we're going to get bombarded with these phone calls. They've probably started already. Please recognize if you're on that list and you're getting those. It may be annoying, but legally they can do that. We talked about text being the number one way that victims are falling for these scams. And that's because they can be sent in so many different variations and very, very cheaply. The things we like to highlight is when you're getting these texts or emails are most importantly the malicious links. You'll hear me say it a couple times throughout the presentation. Please never click on a link from an unsolicited text message. You always want to control the flow of communication. You want to be the one that's reaching out to verify anything. If whatever that messaging says and there's a link to quickly go there, don't use the link, go to the website, verify the information yourself, go to the source. Those malicious links oftentimes can either redirect you to a website that may look like what you think it should, in reality it's not, or they're going to install some type of malicious software such as ransomware or malware that is going to cause secondary problems. The other is hacked accounts. And hacked accounts will tie in with phone numbers. So if by chance your phone or computer gets hacked and they get access to your contact list, what we see happen is they will send out a message or a text or an email to all of the contacts. And oftentimes it is a request for money and it has some type of sympathetic situation where they say they're really embarrassed, that they just need maybe $50, $100 to get them through the next month. They promise they'll pay them back, but please don't tell anyone because they're really embarrassed and it's shameful and it took a lot to send that. And then, of course, they play to that sympathetic end on the recipient who says, sure, I want to help Michael out. He's always been a good friend. They'll send that money. And then after a couple of months, they may be out of, pure curiosity or actually caring about them, ask, hey, did you get that situation resolved? And of course, I would say, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, the $100 I sent you. Well, you didn't send me $100. Well, sure I did. You sent me a text about it. And then all of a sudden you realize that your entire network's been compromised and you don't even know how many people sent money. So then, of course, you have to. So we see this happening more often than we'd like. Social media, you'll see a couple examples here. These see an increased volume around the holidays when we're giving away gift cards, giving away shopping sprees, all solicitations for information. A good example up there is a post where it's, hey, I took this survey or I did XYZ and I got this gift card and it's legitimate, but you have to do it right now. And you click on this link. And then you click on that link and a couple things could happen. Again, might take you to some malicious software, or it'll say, here, enter your information to win. Well, now you're voluntarily giving away that information, and that's the whole purpose. They want to get you to enter, and you don't actually know who really won and who didn't, but then they're just cultivating either a profile about you, or they're building a database that they can use down the road or potentially sell that information. So we really want to bring awareness to these types of scenarios where all this money's being given away and it seems a little bit too easy. If it seems that way, it most likely is, and there's something malicious going on behind the scenes. Government imposter scams. take on a few different roles, and they actually will have some ebbs and flows based on the time of year. Social Security will happen year round. However, a couple of years ago, there was a pretty dramatic increase in benefits. And with that brought also an uptick in the number of scams that we saw occurring because these scammers were taking advantage of the likelihood that a recipient would expect a phone call from the Social Security Administration. And they would use a pitch saying, great news, benefits are increasing. We're using this as an opportunity to verify your information, but then also your account information to get that money routed to where it's supposed to be. Because we're giving away now so much more money, the federal government, it says we need to do an audit and verify it. Could you please tell us X, Y, Z? Of course, you never want to do that. We also don't want to get into the mindset that the only thing that's important is our Social Security number. That is not true. There are at least a dozen different elements of your identity: name, address, birthday, of course, Social Security number, some PIN numbers, as some Medicare numbers. All of these are very important and useful to them. So don't get yourself in the mindset that, well, as long as I don't give away my SSN, I'm okay. Not true. Another one is the IRS. We're coming up into tax season. We'll see that with the IRS, what will happen is these scammers call and they will purport to say that you have a delinquency in your taxes and that you owe. And if you don't pay immediately, there's going to be a tax warrant issued. And then, of course, what will happen is they say, well, you need to pay us in some obscure method. It used to be wiring money, then it changed to gift cards, and we still see gift cards being an often used form of payment. But then now cryptocurrency has also really taken a larger role. And I hope a lot of us, as we talked earlier, would say, well, I can't imagine that the IRS would ever demand payment in a gift card, which, you know, very well may be true. But the scammers say, well, we are a forward-thinking agency. We're getting into cryptocurrency. The federal government believes this is the way. And so if you pay us through cryptocurrency, maybe you'll get a discount or you pay early. But it's that constant threat that if you don't do this immediately, bad things are going to happen. With Medicare, it's not, we don't see as many situations where a threat is being posed as much as it's an attempt to solicit personal information, the banking information, or your actual Medicare or Medicaid ID number. That's very, very important and valuable to them. And so they'll call and say, hey, we need you to renew this information. Where this happens a lot is around every October when you have open enrollment. And so recipients truly do need to go in and verify which programs they want to participate in, they want to renew. And so it's not completely unexpected that they would say Medicare might call to do these for me, or a organization that works with Medicare and Medicaid recipients to make that process easier and help them along. What we want you to do is control that flow of communication. As you'll see throughout all of these, if Medicare is calling you, or the IRS is calling you, or Social Security Administration is calling you, they should have your information. So we don't want you to answer your questions. If you want to validate whether it's a real call, ask them to tell you what their system shows. Ask them what your address appears to be. Ask them what your routing number is. If they truly were from one of these organizations, which none of them will be, they would have that and be able to provide it. Once they tell you, well, we can't do that, we don't have that, it's a scam call. It's also a scam call because none of those federal or state agencies are going to call you and ask you for that information over the phone. They're just going to send you a letter. The law enforcement one is one that we have seen here in Wisconsin a lot. And this takes two different approaches. The first is they're going to call and say that there's a warrant for your arrest. And if you don't pay it immediately, we're doing a roundup. So we're sending out squads and trucks saying, if you don't send us, wire us money or send us gift cards or send us cryptocurrency. Or what they might do is give you a website and say, you can go ahead and pay on our portal. Then we'll go ahead and quash the warrant. Otherwise, you're getting picked up. You're going to come down here. Processing is going to take at least a day. You'll sit overnight. All these things to cause you to get that emotional reaction of saying, I don't want to go to jail. Now, of course, you're also going to pause and they go, wait a second. I've never been arrested. I've never been pulled over. I've never been in trouble. There's no way I could have a warrant. So that one might not be necessarily successful. So what they do also on the second approach is they'll call and say, you had a jury summons, you missed it, you didn't show up for jury duty, and so now there is a warrant for contempt of court issued for you. Now, this is something that any of us might cause us pause with, well, I don't remember getting it, but it's feasible that, it got missed in the mail. Maybe it got put in a different mailbox. Maybe it just got lost in transit. And so you're thinking, boy, it's very possible that I missed jury duty. We know jury duty happens. We know that if you don't go to jury duty, that you can have a warrant issued for contempt. And so that causes a wider range of general population to say, okay, this might actually be me. And then they take the same approach. However, if you pay us right now, we'll quash it. You won't have an issue. I can definitively tell you with absolute confidence from my former life, law enforcement is never, ever going to call you ahead of time and say, hey, just so you know, we're coming to get you. They're just going to show up. They're going to take you away if you actually have a warrant. So please don't fall for any of these scams. If you do think that maybe you did miss a jury summons, just call the clerk of courts. They'll verify whether that's true or not. And I'm going to bet that 99% of the time, it's not true. The utility scams, this one we see year round. Of course, in winter here in Wisconsin, we see a little bit of a rise, and that is because it gets very, very cold and we're very dependent on whether it be our propane or electricity for the heat. And what'll happen is the scammer will call and say, you're delinquent on your bill, and we've got crews out in the area that are going to turn off service. And just so you know, the reconnect is probably going to take about a week, and there's a $150 reconnection fee. But if you pay us right now in one of those three forms of payment, we'll go ahead and we'll avoid that. The other, what they'll do if that doesn't work, they'll want to say, hey, but you know what we can do? We can put you into a program. We understand that situations happen. Just go ahead and verify some information for us. I'll get you enrolled. Personal information, banking information, all those things to help, calm and ease the mind. But what they want you to do is they want you to continually be thinking about, all right, what's going to happen if this doesn't go right? What happens if I don't do this? What if it really isn't a scam and I was wrong and they shut it off? We talk about how anyone can be victimized, and I like to take a quick minute here to talk and give an example of how that really can happen, even to the most aware, educated individuals. We work very closely with local law enforcement agencies throughout the state to share our information and help them bring awareness to their communities about what's going on. And so we had a community police officer in the city of Milwaukee who was out into the community sharing information, sharing resources, was very well acquainted with this type of scam and many others, and got home from work, walked into the kitchen, was standing there, two little ones running around causing chaos like they do, and happened to get a phone call. And the phone call says, you're 2 months behind because we're coming up into the winter season when there's a moratorium on, shutting off service. We're going through and making a quick roundup to collect what's owed. And she says, I've been paying my bills. I've been mailing them in. Well, they didn't get to us. If you pay us immediately, we won't shut it off. And we have trucks in the area going through. Well, it just so happened that as she looked out her kitchen window while talking, a utility truck drove down the street. Pure coincidence. But that one coincidence was enough to get in her mind that this must be legitimate. This must be real. And she ended up paying $1,030 to the scammer. No one was as well informed as she was, but it just speaks to once you get into the moment, you don't hear what's happening. You've got little kids running around. You know that they need heat. You know that they can't go without the power for school and everything else happening. And then you go ahead and you convince yourself that it's real and you want to fix the problem immediately. Tech support, the one I just jumped through is a video, but I really want to point out what we highlight and we continue to see is these tech support pop-up windows. And this one we see targeting oftentimes the probably 50 and older demographic. And pop-up windows were something that kind of when the internet kicked off and computers really, really got rolling, late 80s, early 90s. And with our antivirus and with the operating software, we were seeing pop-ups all the time. Like that was the mechanism really of communication and advertising, but we still see it. And how these though are being tailored is they're saying that you have a security alert or you computer from what appears to be a software and antivirus provider that you use says, hey, there's something wrong and you need to either click on this link or you need to call this phone number for us to fix it. And when you click on the link, you might all of a sudden become victim and realize that there's some malware or ransomware being installed, or you call a phone number and they say, hey, we purport to be Microsoft assistants. And what we want to do is in order for us to make sure that nothing else is infected and that your computer is operating the way it should be, we want to remote in. And by remoting in, that means that you give them access and they can come in through the internet connection and they start moving around. And it appears that they're checking things and it looks fancy, but in reality, sometimes they're either installing a virus or they're giving themselves access to a lot of other information such as websites, passwords, bank account, pictures, things you have saved that you're not even aware of. And then once they're out, what they'll do is they'll reach back out and say, well, just so you know, this is what I did, realize that it's been a scam, and then they're going to demand money. They're either going to lock you out of your computer and say, if you don't pay, we want to lock it, or sometimes they'll just steal the information. Sometimes they'll just wreck the computer just out of pure malice. The other is they'll say, we purport to be some type of third-party company who can fix this for you, but you know what, this was really bad. You're really going to want this protection. Sign up and we'll give you the bird service and guarantee that this will never happen again. And in reality, there probably wasn't anything wrong to start with. And now you're paying oftentimes far, far more than what a normal subscription would be. In response to any of these, all we want you to do is not engage or react to that pop-up. We want you to, again, control the flow of communication, reach out to Microsoft, contact Norton directly. Whoever it is that alert came from, don't engage, find a trusted source to communicate with them, and then just say, this is what I got. Is this legitimate? You'll see most times it was not. Romance scams. We're doing a big push for this in our outreach this month because Valentine's Day is right around the corner. And with that brings a new opportunity for scammers to really hit the social media aspect of these hard. Online dating and relationships have become a normal, accepted way of life. And there are multiple platforms on which this is being done. And so the scammers are taking advantage of that. And what will happen is, first is, you'll see that we used to talk about, hey, look at the image that's being used, and we would encourage individuals to do a quick reverse search on that image, meaning you copy it, you throw it into a search engine, and what we wanted you to do was look and see if that photo showed up on different websites with different names. So if you were talking to someone named Michael, and all of a sudden you do that search and you realize that Michael shows up with a name of Bob here and Frank here and Randy here, that's a red flag. And what happens is these scammers just steal pictures. They steal profiles from other websites, and then they throw them on a different platform and they use those and pretend to be that person. I will say that, and we'll talk about in a second, AI has changed that up a little bit and has made it more difficult. And at the end, we'll talk about the impact that AI has had on several of these scams. And this is one of them. But in traditional, where we go, what'll happen is right away, they're going to profess their love within the first week or 2 weeks. And that is them trying to sink that hook. It's trying to get you engaged, get you locked in, get you committed to the communication and the relationship. Now, they'll always come up with excuses on how they can refuse to meet face to face. And, before the popularity of Zoom and video calling and FaceTime and Teams and all that stuff, this was a little bit more of a red flag. I should say it's more of a red flag now that we have the ability to do exactly what we're doing right now. If they're telling you that they have the inability to even have a video call, that is a huge red flag. Before the video calls, it was a little bit more of they would have excuses where I have to leave for a little bit. I'm sorry that I'll be gone for a couple of weeks. and then they'll always be asking for money. It's, I had a family emergency. I don't have enough money to fly and come see you. I personally had a medical emergency and now these hospital bills, and I have to stay here and get a second job. Multiple excuses on why you can't see them and why they can't meet face to face, which of course would validate that it's a scam and they're not a real person. You'll see we have a quick bullet about serving overseas, and that's because the military community is highly targeted with this particular scam. One, because it offers them a little bit more credibility on why some of these excuses very well may be legitimate. If you're deployed overseas and you're doing things, it's very possible that you can't meet face to face because you're going to be gone for unknown amount of time. Or you set a date to say, we're going to talk on Tuesday at noon. And then, of course, you don't make that call and you reach back out later and say, sorry, something came up. We had to go take care of it. I'm back, maybe set a different time. Secondly, the inability to just up and leave from a deployment doesn't work that way. And so that creates a little bit more legitimacy to why they can't see them. But they'll also continue to ask for money. I'm in the service. I don't make a lot of money. We're over here deployed. I sure could use a care package or a gift package. If you could send me some gift cards that I could use to help out with whatever it is I need, or maybe even at home, that's how they start to suck the money out. Lottery contests and scams. This one, we're always so familiar, and we talk about Publishers Clearinghouse, and that, unfortunately, Ed McMahon just doesn't show up at the door anymore with that $1 million check, that in the glitz and glamour. Now all of this has really gone digital, but Publishers Clearinghouse still is a very, very big promotion, and many, many others that mirror that same approach. However, what they do is the key to that is when you win a prize, these scammers will purport to be Publishers Clearinghouse and tell you, well, congratulations, you won a new boat, but you're going to have to pay us for the shipping and the taxes and the insurance to get it there. And that amount is oftentimes a fraction of the value of that particular prize. So a lot of victims will say, well, it makes sense. If I pay $5,000 to get this boat here, I can sell it for $40,000. That's still a huge net gain. Or $5,000 for a brand new boat. What a deal. Of course, that when that happens and you pay that shipping and then the boat doesn't, either you don't have any more contact, or they'll continue to say, now there's another fee. So thanks for taking care of the shipping and the taxes. Now we need you to pay this additional processing fee. They'll do the same thing with a cash prize. If you win $10,000, they'll say, just so you know, the Department of Revenue in Wisconsin requires that we take 33%, or that there's 33% luxury tax on it. And so please pay us that 33% in advance. The victim's response is, well, just take out of my $10,000 and send me the difference. And the scammer will always respond with, that isn't the way it works. State and federal law prohibits that. All of this is garbage. None of this is true. In Wisconsin, you don't have to pay a dime for a prize that you legitimately won. Absolutely nothing. So if you're being asked to pay anything at any point, it's a scam. The other is, we like to talk about foreign lotteries. And I would say not the advent of scamming. This has been going on for decades and decades, but there used to be the foreign lotteries where a certain individual in a different country won a bunch of money and they want you to have part of it to help them get to America. Please understand that first, you can't win a lottery that you didn't enter. And second, it is illegal to win a foreign lottery in the United States. So even if by some crazy chance you're on vacation, you entered the lottery and you did win, it's illegal for you to claim those winnings. So even if you won, you lost. There we go. So the grandparent scam, I'm skipping through the videos so that we can really get an opportunity to share the information and have some time for Q&A. The grandparent scam is one that we are also starting to label the family scam a little bit, and that is because it's not necessarily just targeting the grandparents. There are different variations in that because as we do things like this and bring more awareness, it's a little those generations are far more aware of what's happening and they know what to look for. But historically, what will happen is that individual, that family member will call and say they've either been arrested or they were involved in a crash. And in the past, it almost always involved a broken nose. And the reason for that broken nose is it was an excuse to explain why the voice was different, why the voice was nasally, why Michael was calling, but it didn't sound like Michael. And what they'll want to do is they'll say, "Hey, Grandma, it's me." And then Grandma, of course, says, "Michael?" Well, that's one step right there. Now they've realized who it is, then you understand what name to use. And then they go ahead with a story. And there's 100 different variations on what story they're going to give. With social media, it's made it a lot easier to come up with what that story, because a lot of the younger generations like to showcase what they're doing. And this isn't I guess it is a little bit on a take on the classic, don't post that you're going away for 7 days because then they can come rob your house and so on. Things are a little bit more complex than that. Now it is, even if you make mention that you're going somewhere or who you're with or what your friend circle is or where you go to school or when their spring break is. None of it even has to be saying, okay, here's the date and time and where it is. Just those little pieces of information are enough for a scammer to put together a story. And if Grandma isn't talking to Michael every single day, she may not know who he's with, but may recognize a couple of those little details that make it seem real. And always what they'll say is, "Please don't tell anyone else. I'm really embarrassed. Mom and Dad are going to be really angry. They're never going to let me go on spring break again. They're never going to let me do this. It's going to break their trust. They might make me come home." And of course, the grandparents say, "I understand. Yep, that's probably what's going to happen. I want to help," and they'll help. The other two sides of it we'll see are someone's calling and they're purporting to be either a police officer or a lawyer. And the police officer will say, "Hey, Michael got into a little bit of trouble and he's here at the police station. He seems like a really good kid. This is actually a pretty rough jail. He wanted to ask if I'd give a call. I said I would because I don't want him to spend too much time in here. It's probably going to be a little bit emotionally distraught if he spends more than a night in here. So I'm sharing with you, here's a portal on how you can, pay the bail, or if you just want to, we're a forward-thinking agency. If you want to wire some money or send some cryptocurrency, this is how we can get out." Same thing with a lawyer. Lawyer will say, "I was here with another client. I was walking by. I saw your grandson sitting in the cell. He asked if I would make a quick phone call. I'll be honest, this isn't something I normally do, but if you just want to send me $500, I got to come back and get my client on anyways. I'll take care of your grandson. Don't worry about it." And of course, everyone wants to help to make sure that doesn't happen. One tip we have to try and combat this is not necessarily just as having a family password, making it extremely unique, but an added layer of protection is adding a family phrase. Just something, whether it's something that's well known throughout the family, so that when that call potentially does come in, you can say, "Well, I really want to help out. Just remind me again what our family phrase is." And if they truly are in trouble and they do need help, and hopefully they remember that, well, then you know it's real. Check overpayment scams. These have been around for a long time, and they continue to be successful. Where this works a lot is when you're selling things oftentimes through an online marketplace. And it doesn't just have to be a private to private. It could be you think you're buying something from a business or selling something to a business. And then they send you what appears to be a business check and they tell you, "Oh, I'm sorry, I screwed up. We sent you too much money. Could you please just send us the balance back? That was our fault." Or there'll be a sympathy story. "I really screwed this up. It's my second week. If you could just keep this between us, because if they find out that I messed up in my first 2 weeks, I'm going to get fired." The third is they'll tell you, "Hey, I recognize it's an inconvenience for you to have to send us a check and go to the post office. So go ahead and keep $50 for yourself. And then please send us the rest you can as soon as possible." The key is the soon as possible. They want to get it back because they don't want to get fired. They need the urgency to get the money back into the account. But what they really want is they want you to send that money before the check clears at your financial institution. Because once that check is deposited and you send money back without it clearing and verifying with the bank that it's cleared, that's truly your money that you're throwing away. And when all of a sudden you realize that the check is fake and the bank notifies you that and you say, "Hey, wait a second, then I want my $10,000 back," they're not going to give it back to you. If you do think that there may be situations where human error does happen and the situation might arise, just wait for the check to clear. Just say, I understand that you sent me too much. However, I know that there's a scam called check overpayment. I want to do my due diligence and make sure that I don't get scammed here. I'm going to wait. And if this check actually clears and it's good, then I'll send you the difference back. You're probably going to find out that it won't clear. Auto warranty scams. This one here, I'm sure just about everyone on this call has either received one of these mailers or they've gotten a phone call saying your auto warranty is about to expire. You absolutely have to renew it. Here's how much money it's going to cost you if you don't. There's a limited time. It seems like it's actually targeting you, or maybe even it mentions a dealership in the local area. Almost all of these are scams. And if they're not a scam, they're going to offer you coverage that really doesn't provide anything, or there are so many different hoops that you have to jump through to maintain qualifying for that coverage that they become null and void, oftentimes within months of you actually paying something. What we want to encourage you is if you really want to either extend a warranty they potentially did buy or get an extended warranty, just go to a local dealership. I can promise you that every single one of them would love the opportunity to sell you that product. So charity scams, what we want to do here, and my message, I don't want to deter anyone from giving to charity, because certainly there's a huge benefit both to the organization and in our supporting them. But we want you to do your due diligence and make sure you research where your money's going. First is, we talked about earlier that the charities are not covered by the do not call list. So you very well could get calls both from legitimate charities and from scammers. We'll see them try and target organizations that kind of play to the heartstrings, which local police and fire, this happens all the time, and they try to kind of exploit that willingness to support those local services. And it does make it, though, really difficult to tell the difference, because there usually are a live person on these types of charity scams because they want to have that interaction. What we want you to do is just turn around the flow of communication. If you think it might be legitimate and you think it might be something you're interested in giving towards, ask some questions. Where are you located? Where are you headquartered? How many people do you have working with you? Where does the money go? How much goes towards the overhead? How much goes to the actual cause? Who's the CEO? Little questions that if they're really with that organization, they should know most of the answers to. You can also do your own research at charitynavigator.org or give.org. These are two great websites that vet these charities and provide a lot of the information that I just told you about, so you can make sure your money goes to where it should be. The student loan scams, this is one that's we've seen ups and downs, and that's because with forbearance continuing being postponed, each one of those postponements was another opportunity for the scammers looking to target student loan holders on this crushing debt that was coming in. For some, it might be. And what they're doing is they're promising and saying, hey, we have the solution. We have a great relationship with the Department of Education. We can get your reduced by half, if not more. And what they're asking you for is two things. One, just pay us, 10% of what your balance is, or a flat fee of $500. We'll do all the heavy lifting for you, and you'll see a huge, huge reduction in your balance. They'll also ask you for your federal student aid ID. That's very, very important, like your Medicare ID or maybe your Social Security number, because that, if they have that and some other easily attainable information about you, that gives them access to the loans where they might actually apply for more and not help you get rid of the ones that you have. Investment scams, I'm not going to go into all of these because some of them get really detailed. It could take a long time. The one investment scam that we see tied to a few of the other ones that we've mentioned today, really most notably the romance scam, has a rather obnoxious name, and it's called pig butchering. And for those who don't know what pig butchering, how it works in the romance scam is they establish that connection and they say, we have this promise, this great life together. We want to get a house down in the Florida Keys, and I have a great opportunity on how we can make that fast cash through cryptocurrency. And so if you invest with me, I'll just show you, let's do a small amount to show that it works. And so they each put a set amount of money in, and then the scammer puts their own money in to try and make it look like there's a profit. And then they just keep doing this. And they say, look, it's working, it's working, it's working. And then once the victim has put in sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, seeing that balance continue to grow and what appears to be truly, truly profit, then all of a sudden the romance is broke off. They never hear from them again. Cryptocurrency can't be recovered, and they've lost sometimes everything. So what do we want to look out for? First is that demand to pay in these obscure payment methods, wiring, gift cards, money cards, cryptocurrency, the absolute urgency and the need to verify something that you possess. Again, turn that around, have them verify to you. They want you to keep it a secret because they don't want you to ask anybody else, or they don't want you to go research it. Oftentimes you can Google just the highlights of that conversation and you'll show scam, scam, scam. Unsolicited phone calls. That's the key. Unsolicited texts, calls, emails. We don't want you responding to anything that you weren't expecting or don't understand why it would be sent to you. The government doesn't call you. The government sends letters. And when things are really, really bad, the government shows up. You never have to pay to claim a prize. We never want you to click on a link that says, hey, confirm this. Often we would see this around Christmas with shipping. Hey, there's an incident with your package. Click on this link to verify your address. Click on this link to verify your account information, anything, all frauds. And then when you start piggybacking, when you made a payment and all of a sudden they come back for more, all kinds of red flags should be going off there. Well, I'd like to take a quick minute to talk about how artificial intelligence is changing this and is making it more and more difficult for us to actually make sure we can provide the education on what to look for, because it's getting harder and harder to figure out what that is. Most notably, we talked about the grandparent scam. We talked about having to have that broken nose. And we also talked in the romance scam with that image. Well, AI has made that kind of obsolete. In a grandparent scam, they made it obsolete because that broken nose and that excuse isn't necessary anymore. When we put this slide in about 9 months ago, it started with saying it took 20 seconds of audio to mimic a voice. Then about 4 months ago, we changed that to 10 seconds. And then about a month and a half ago, the FBI has let us know that it takes 3 seconds of audio to mimic a voice, use AI to recreate that voice in a scam. Well, almost anything that's said on social media nowadays is longer than 3 seconds. So as you can see, it's very, very easy. So now when you get that phone call from Michael saying, I got in a fight or I was in jail, it actually sounds like Michael. The other part is with this voice cloning and also through chats and communication with AI and in conjunction with quantum computing and how fast it can handle, we're starting to see that they can actually respond and have conversations in real time. And so it sounds like it reads like it. And it's even more convincing on what they're asking and saying to get that hook a little bit deeper. But the last is, to me, the true danger that I'm concerned about is not just how convincing these are, but how much more widespread these scams can be. You know, it's no longer where you need a one-to-one relationship where I have to call you because I need to be able to react to what you're saying and how it's going. And maybe I did my research on the backstory. Computers can do all of that, making it all that more difficult to figure out and pick out. The other is we want to talk cryptocurrency. We've watched this happen in phases. Cryptocurrency has become the preferred method of payment for scams because it is very difficult to trace and even more difficult to get it back. And how we started seeing this adding a little bit more element of, oh, this could be real, as these criminals will figure out where these Bitcoin ATMs are. And they'll say, well, I need you to just go to your local gas station. It's right there as you walk in on the left-hand side. Just go on there and do X, Y, Z. Well, if you live in that community and you're familiar with that gas station, and you're like, well, this must be legitimate because they know exactly where this is. That is just one more key to make, or one more variable making it all that more difficult to figure out what's real and what's fake. We offer some tools on how you can protect yourself. I won't get into them too much right here, but we just want you to know that there are features on your phone, both in the operating software, and then also there's additional apps that can get built in to help you block some of these numbers. Also calling your phone carrier to say, hey, do you have any other additional services? A lot of them provide them for free to help filter out a lot of these junk calls. but there are a couple little tools. All of them are free that you can sign up for to make life a little bit calmer for you. We harped on gift cards throughout the whole presentation. The key here we want to talk about is gift cards are for gifts. You should never, ever have to pay for anything with a gift card, much less to a legitimate organization and especially to a government agency. Never. What we do want to highlight is something that changed in the past couple months is if you send a bunch of gift cards, or if you potentially buy some gift cards and suddenly the balance is gone within hours, call the gift card company. We found that they see how these are being abused, and there is an actual window of opportunity now where they might reimburse you for that money. I can't say they'll do it all the time, and I don't blame them for making that window very small because they don't know what's real and what's not. But we have seen in some circumstances where they do return the money, which is the first time we've seen it. So we want to make sure you're aware of it. Last, we talked and we opened with, please don't be ashamed yourself if you do fall victim for it to call us. We can't do anything if we don't know about it. Law enforcement can't do anything if they don't know about it. If you mailed gift cards, because that was part of the scam, they said mail them here, and you realize a day later, call the post office, telling them what happened, give them the address where it was mailed, give a description envelope. They can pull that out of circulation and they can get that back to you. If it's larger losses or maybe some identity things, call law enforcement. If anything, just make them aware of what's happening, and there may be something that's being targeted that community. So that little information makes a difference. And then also, if you're big, call your financial institution, and if you have multiple, make sure they all know. Because once the identity is compromised or one account is not compromised, if you use similar identifiers or passwords or usernames, there's a chance that the others will be targeted as well. So put those alerts across, and then lastly, tell us. Please let us know. Give us a chance to help refix your identity or get some money back on however you may have been victimized. And that's all I have. This is a quick, we like to at the end here. Thank you for the presentation today. We also, if you or any of your other organizations that you're tied to would like a presentation, we have a whole catalog of topics. They're free. And then on the left, we have social media. I'm not here to garner followers. What I'm here to do is to try and say, we provide updated information as we learn about it so that things are current and trending, and they may be in your neighborhood or local community. Once we hear about it, we throw it up on social media. It's all too easy. Lets you know what's going on in real time.
Thanks so much, Michael. A lot of very good information here. I had a lot of takeaways too, so it's good to know all the things we can do proactively. Probably the biggest thing is just to always be aware of what's going on and be skeptical, right?
Absolutely.
Keep your information to yourself unless you know for sure who you're giving it to.
Great advice.
Yep. Michael, we did have one question come in that I just wanted to ask. The question was, why is it illegal to win a foreign lottery? What happens if I buy a lottery ticket in Canada? Are you saying I can't collect if it's a winner?
Great question. So, and thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. You can't play and participate and win a foreign lottery when you are located in the United States. If you were to go and play a foreign lottery in that country and then attempt to claim the prize there, those local laws would apply. And so ours is if you are playing the Canadian lottery online or through a mail order from the United States, it's illegal to do that cross-border. But if everything takes place in that country, I suspect you would be allowed to win.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just a couple of things because, everyone on this call or most everyone, they're clients of the firm. And so just in regard to investments, specifically accounts held at Charles Schwab, we do get notified from clients all the time. And so I just want everyone to know if your information or your identity is compromised, it is good practice to let our office know. There are various measures that we can take to either block your account or at least heightened supervision on your account for suspicious activity. And there is a lot coming down the pike for me as the compliance officer of our firm from the SEC regarding cybersecurity and just overall protection of client accounts from scams, frauds, just everything going on right now that could be disruptive to information and our finances. So we do our best around here to protect your assets. That includes things outside of our control, and just keep in communication with us if there is anything with your situation that we need to be informed about. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to wrap up. Again, Michael, you did great and appreciate all the information. Thank you.
Thank you.